I have not done a depth chart video in a very long time, so today we are changing that. We are going to make Canada's January 2024 depth chart in a 4-4-2 system with 4 players at each position, so let's get into it. Now, before we get started, I just want to be very clear. This is my personal depth chart. It's what I would do if I was in charge. So with that being said, for the keepers, my starting keeper, it's who I hope actually takes over the starting role, is Maxime Crépeau. Crépeau has been fantastic with LAFC. I do really like the move to Portland Timbers. I know some Canadians were hoping he was going to go over to Europe, but that honestly was probably never going to be an option. He is a great keeper in Major League Soccer, and for Canada, he's a great option. And the number one reason I really have him as our starting keeper is just the way he plays. He plays well with the ball at his feet. He can play well in this system. I mean, I know we don't really know who's the coach is going to be, but just this modern game, Crépeau fits the bill. At the backup role, and again, I wouldn't be that mad if he took over Crépeau, but just again, from a style point of view, I think Crépeau needs to be our starter. We have Dane St. Clair. In the third spot, we have Jonathan Sirois, who's been, again, absolutely lights out for CF Montreal. I think he's got a big future. A lot of people are saying that he could potentially be our starting keeper for 2026. I don't think it's a bit of a stretch. I just think Sirois's got a little bit more to prove and keep, putting in consistent seasons in MLS similar to what Crépeau has done. But for right now, if I'm bringing 3 keepers to a camp, these are the 3 I'm going with. And then at number 4, I do have Tom McGill, just a decent option in Europe. Again, for him to crack my top 3, I think I'd want him actually playing a little bit more in a competitive league, not because he's not playing for Brighton. He's playing for Brighton's U23. So a loan move to a league like the Championship or something where he can get some reps would be great. But with all that being said, I left Borjan out for obvious reasons. I just think it's time to move on, and those are my keepers. For the right back position, my starting right back is Alistair Johnston. No real debate there, whether it's outside right center back or right back. I'm always going to prefer Johnson over Larea. With that being said, Larea is in number 2. This is very, very close for me. Johnson is great at Celtic. He's put in some big performances with the national team, but so is Larea. Seems like every time Larea plays for Canada, he does something special. 2 different types of fullbacks, but depending on the opponent, I could go with one versus the other. But in a one-off match for me, I'm going Johnson, Larea. Then I have our first dual nat in this squad, and number 3 in the right back depth chart is Mo Farsi. This is a player who's obviously been linked to potentially represent Algeria. I think that he's a fullback that we need to target. I mean, we saw him get a start in MLS Cup, winning it with the Columbus Crew. He's very attack-minded fullback, which I really like as well. He can play in the wing-back role. He can play as a right mid. He can play as a right back. He'd be one that it'd be pretty disappointing to miss out on. So, I mean, if we ended up, I don't know at the time of recording right now, if we had like a camp routine, but it'd be great to get him in camp to see how he kind of fits in with the other Canadians and if he could see himself actually representing this national team going forward without the risk of getting cap tied. And then at number 4 is Zator. Zator is just a decent option. I was debating which player to go for. I like Zator's versatility. He can play in anywhere pretty much across the back line. Prefer him in the outside right center back. I like him there more so than a right back, but we do have actually quite a bit of center backs to talk about today, and he's doing some good stuff in Poland. Moving along now to the center back positions. The starting pair I went with is Kamal Miller and Derek Cornelius. Yes, I know Cornelius is a lefty, but this is who I think could be a good team going forward. I know from what we've seen of those 2 recently, they haven't been overly convincing, but I think long-term they are our best option. Moving on to the second pairing, I have Steven Vittoria and Joel Waterman. Vittoria, I mean, despite being up there in age, he can still offer something to this team. I think he's still probably a year and a bit, maybe 2 years before he ends up hanging up the boots for Canada. Definitely has a role to play. So I have him in here still, especially in the back 3. He's obviously at his best when he's in the central of that back 3. I have Joel Waterman. Really like what he's been doing at CF Montreal. And our third pair, I have Scott Kennedy. He's an iffy one for me. Kennedy's been out of the national team for a little bit, but he is having a quietly decent season in Austria, and I partnered him up with Lucas McNaughton, who at one point I thought could be a great option to potentially start for a Canadian side with the performances he was putting in for Nashville. He kind of slowed down a bit, but I mean, he's getting into his late 20s. He could still be a good option, especially again in that back 3. I'd be comfortable playing him through the middle as well, which leaves our final pairing of Zach McGraw and Luc de Fougerolles. I have de Fougerolles in here. He's one of the most exciting prospects we have. Looks like he's almost certainly going to play for Canada one day, but I think it's just a little too early. Again, similar to McGill, he needs to play for the first team, not just the U23s or whatnot. So he's one to keep an eye on. I'm excited for him maybe a couple years down the line, but he's still in my depth chart. For the left back position, we have some interesting choices. I didn't count Davies as a left back. I want him playing a little further up the pitch because there's been no indication that he will ever play as a left back for Canada, which means my starting left back is Sam Adekubi. No surprise there. A lot of successful seasons over in Europe. He's back with the Whitecaps doing what he needs to do there, so I don't think there's any surprise. In the number 2 position, I went with Raheem Edwards. Now, I like what Edwards did in LA during his time with LAFC and the Galaxy. Despite the Galaxy not having a very successful couple seasons, he's back right now with CF Montreal, and this will be a very intriguing move to me because we've seen so many CF Montreal players over the past few seasons break into the national team. Edwards has been on the outside looking in, but I think that there's a player there. He definitely is obviously a little bit more attack-minded as maybe like, that left wing-back kind of role. I'm excited to see what he can do this year and if he can break his way back in. It's a competitive role because of the way that this Canadian side plays, but I do like him, and that's why he's in my 2. The 3 and 4 position are both kind of center back, left back hybrids, and that's Bombito and Hebert. Both of them, again, have played at the center back position, can also play as right back, left back, very versatile. It's why I have them. Bombito in the 3 because he's younger, and Hebert in the 4 because I do really like what he did with St. Louis. It's a shame he kind of fell off, lost his starting role, but these are 2 players that are going to be MLS proven, and I think either one of them, if they had the opportunity with the national team, could definitely make some type of impact. Onto the right mid position has to be Tajon Buchanan. Just got a massive move to Inter Milan. Right now, at the time of recording, he has not got his debut yet, but this is a player who's been absolutely fantastic for the national team. First assist, obviously, in the World Cup for Canada, setting up Davies. Right wing back, left wing back, right mid, left mid, striker. It doesn't really matter. He's our guy, and I want him. And my favorite position in the national team is when he plays kind of that right wing back, right mid position. So I obviously want him there. Second in the depth chart on the right-hand side is Junior Hoylett. He's getting a little bit up there in age, but he can still absolutely make an impact with this team. We see it every time he plays for Canada. Absolutely love the leadership qualities he brings. I don't think he's quite done yet. And third is Jay Nelson, who's had some success over in Europe as well. I was lucky enough to be able to interview him, had a great talk with him. If you guys want to check that out, that interview is over on One Soccer. But this is a player who just can bring that bit of pace, little dribble, trickery. I liked what he did in the Gold Cup. Every time he came off the bench, he looked like he was an electric player and can make some type of impact. I know he's still a little raw, needs to probably finish up that final ball and obviously, that finishing ability as well. But there's definitely a player in here, and I would like to see him get a little bit more opportunities with the national team. And then in 4, I think this player is still a ways away from the national team, but that is Theo Corbeanu. Actually, right now at the day of recording, his loan spell with Grasshopper just ended. I don't know where he's going to go next, but he did do some pretty good things in Switzerland. I know that he had a really good start, picked up a bunch of assists, kind of fell out of favor a little bit, and I'm curious to see where he will end up. But he's still very young and, again, very raw. So if he can find that right move and just, get a little bit more familiar with the position that he wants to play and his impact on the pitch, I think that there's a chance down the line that, he could get an opportunity with his national team. The midfield positions were a little difficult for me to do. Not really the top 2, though, because that's Stephen Eustachio and Ishmael Kone. No surprise, Eustachio is hands down, in my opinion, our most important player, and Kone is having a great season right now at Watford. We can debate whether this should be a 3-man midfield or not, but if it is a 2, these are the 2 guys we definitely have to go with. Next up, we have Ali Ahmed and Jonathan Osorio. Ahmed is a player for me who I think could be in for, I know he's had his kind of a bit of a breakout, but could be in for just a rock star season with the Whitecaps. I love everything about this guy. He's very versatile as well, can play on the right-hand side. We've seen him play at left back. I think he's best in that kind of number 8 role, which is why I partnered him up here. Now, he's not necessarily going to play with a Jonathan Osorio starting, but just coming off the bench, kind of like the way a depth chart would work. I had the 2 partnered up. Jonathan Osorio, ton of experience. We know what we're going to get out of him. I don't think he's quite a starter at this stage. I think he's kind of a little past that, in my opinion, but he can still be a player that can bring some creativity off the bench. Next up, we have Harry Payton and Matthew Chouanier. Chouanier is a player I'm very high on, and again, very versatile. We can see him play left wing back, right wing back, as an 8, as a 10. He's a player I want to see get a little bit more chances with the national team. I thought Biello would give him that. We've seen him brought into camp and not really got the minutes I was hoping for. And Harry Payton quietly is reviving his career over in Scotland after going half a year without a club. He's doing really well right now at Motherwell. And, he earned a cap back against Japan. That was his first cap for the national team. I think he'll definitely be one of those bubble players going forward, which leaves my final pairing of Saliba and Piet, two more CF Montreal guys. Piet's experience probably should maybe be a little higher on this list. There's no way right now I don't see him getting called into camps just with that experience. And really, if I'm looking at the list right now, probably the only natural 6, if you don't really count Eustachio, because I do think Eustachio is a little better as an 8. So Piet probably should be higher on this list, and it also shows the need that we have for other 6s to come through. I left off Victor Laturi because he's not really having a great season. He's not playing a lot either, so this is hopefully an opportunity for somebody else to come up. And Saliba is just one of those talented players that we're going to have to keep an eye on because he will be a big part of this team going forward in a couple seasons. For our left midfield position, we have Alphonso Davies leading the way. Again, it's not a shocker to see that, although we don't really know what his best position is for the national team. I don't think it's left mid. I don't think it's left wing, striker, center mid kind of position. I like him best at left wing back, but we've still yet to see him as a left back. I just don't personally think that's going to happen. So in my 4-4-2, it makes more sense for me to put him as a left mid than a left back. And hopefully if he plays his position, uses his speed, he can be very effective there. Next up is Liam Miller, who's having a great season right now at Preston North End. You could argue it's a little unfair. Maybe he doesn't get into a starting 11. It's just difficult with a Davies and a Buchanan. Maybe if you would have dropped Davies to left back, Miller could have gotten an opportunity. But he's so direct. He's so creative. He can hit him from distance as well. I've seen multiple screamers he's scored over the years. And I think he's just getting a little bit more confident this year right now back in England. And I think it was a great move to leave Basel, and I'm excited to see what he can do with the national team going forward. For the next 2 positions, I have Jacob Schaffelberg and Ryan Raposo. Now, Schaffelberg is a player who got a lot of Canadians very hyped up in the Gold Cup when he scored that beauty. He's done some pretty good things with Nashville, but he's still kind of on the outside looking into that starting 11. I still think he can be an impact player for Canada, but more than likely, if he is going to make a camp, it will be to come off the bench and just bring a little bit of energy. And then we have another dual national, and that's Ryan Raposo, with recent reports that China are taking a look at him. When Alex and I interviewed Raposo, he did reveal to us that China is a potential option for him. I think if he had the chance, he'd probably want to represent Canada. I just don't know how close an opportunity like that is. I think Raposo, over the seasons he's had with Vancouver, deserves a shot, some type of opportunity. Again, like a Camp Poutine type of situation. Even a full camp, I think he could have had a shot to potentially come in. It's just, as you guys can see from this depth chart, there is a lot of options on wingers, on fullbacks. This is another versatile player, like many I've talked about before, who I've seen play at left wing back, right wing back. He's actually started his career as an attacking midfielder, so I'd like to see him get a chance, and it'd be a shame if we lost him to China. Finally, onto the strikers. My top pair is Jonathan David and Kyle Larin. Both had a slow start to the season, but they are starting to find some form, both scoring goals in multiple games right now, and it's starting to look pretty good at club level. But as we know with the national teams, these two have always been able to score goals, which is great to see. The next pairing, I have Jason Russell-Rowe and Ike Ugbo. Now, I think Ugbo is, in reality, pretty far down the depth chart. I don't know why. I don't know what conversations are had there. He did just get a new loan move to Sheffield Wednesday. This is a team fighting relegation in the championship, not usually a club you want to find yourself at. But he wasn't getting opportunities at Cardiff, fell completely out of favor after a good start. So he needs to get his season and his career back on track. Will it happen at a relegation club in a scrappy league? I don't know, but this is a player who can score goals, a natural number 9, and is someone that the Canadian men's national team need to find a way to utilize. They can't keep bringing him into camps and hardly playing him. I think sooner or later he deserves to get some significant minutes. I just don't know if they're ever going to happen right now unless a new fresh-faced manager comes in. And then Russell Rowe, just a young talent. I really like what he's done at the Crew. Obviously, he's just won the title there as well with Farsi. I have him a little higher than some of the other players on this list just because it seems like he's trusted a little bit more. And I think that he's a type of player who, because he's so raw, has big potential. So I would like to see him get some opportunities. For the next pair, we have Theo Bair and Charles Andreas Brim. Now, Alex and I just did an interview with Bair where he talked about being a dual national. He's also eligible for Jamaica, but he wants to play for Canada. And I think he deserves it. He's having a great season right now in Scotland. He's big, tall. As you can see with some of the highlight reel goals he's scored, he's good with his feet, good finisher as well. I'd like to see him get an opportunity. And for Charles Andreas Brim, I mean, he's proved that he belongs in the top flight over in the Netherlands. Right now, he's playing a little bit more on the wing, but can definitely play through the middle. And I'd like both of these guys with the national team going forward. For my last pair of strikers, I do have another dual national, and that is Daniel Jebbison. Look, I would love Jebbison to commit to the national team. I just don't know if and when that will ever happen. The first thing I want from him is just to get back healthy, maybe get a loan move and get some reps under his belt. Odds are he probably will never play for England, so Canada will always be an option there. It could be in a couple years from now. It could potentially be at this camp routine if it happens. I don't really know. I think he's one that we never should give up on until, we either lose him or we get him, and I'm always going to include him in my depth charts for right now. And the final striker on this list is DeAndre Kerr. This is a talented player who was playing in a very difficult situation last year at TFC. I thought Kerr did really well for himself. I think he proved he can play out wide. He can play through the middle like this. He's just an exciting talent who showed, he's got some good character playing in a very tough environment like that. So he's young as well, which is a bonus, and I definitely would like to see him get an opportunity with the national team. That is my overall January 2024 depth chart. Let me know what you guys think. Do you agree with my depth chart? Did I leave some players off you wish I would have included? And as always, if you enjoyed it, be sure to drop a like, drop a sub, and we'll see you guys soon. Cheers, friends.